back to the program. Senator, by the way, you were the winner in terms of more appearances on TV and radio than any other candidate we've had. And then I'll tell you why is because you accept the invitation more than other people.
Well, good to know, and it's good to be with you today, Sean. Thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate you being with us. I think the number one question on the minds of Republicans right now is what is going on with the delegates. For example, if you can explain to people that your campaign, that you have every right within the rules to talk to candidates that are pledged on a first ballot to candidate A or candidate C, you being candidate B, and that tell us what that process is. You're assuming this is going to the convention. You told me that in the last two interviews. So as part of that, you're hoping to get to a second ballot. In other words, in a second ballot, people that support Donald Trump or John Kasich or Marco Rubio, if those delegates are still relevant, can then switch their votes. So you are in a process of talking to delegates, and it seems to be very extensive. Can you explain to people what's going on?
Sean, with all respect, that's not what people are concerned about. I'm campaigning every day. People are concerned about bringing jobs back to America. People are concerned about raising wages. People are concerned about getting the federal government off the backs of small businesses, and people are concerned about beating Hillary. And the media loves to obsess about process. This process and this whining from the Trump campaign is all silly. It's very, very simple.
Senator, I'm on social media with millions of people. I have 550 radio stations, and I have the top-rated cable show at my hour all across the board. And I am telling you that people are telling me that they find this whole process confusing. I can read the articles, for example, about, what people want to know what actually happened in Georgia this weekend, where people that, I guess, on the first ballot are going to Donald Trump, but representatives of yours talk to them and are persuading them to vote for you on a second ballot. That is an important question, because I think most people would like to know how this works. And I'm asking you, it's more than a process question. It's an integrity of the election question, and everybody's asking me this question. So I'm giving you an opportunity to explain it.
Sean, the only people asking this question are the hardcore Donald Trump supporters.
Why do you do this every single time? No, you got to stop. Every time I have you on the air and I ask a legitimate question, you try to throw this in my face. I'm getting sick of it. I've had you on more than any other candidate on radio and TV. So if I ask you, Senator, a legitimate question to explain to the audience, why don't you just answer it?
Sean, can I answer your question without being interrupted?
Go ahead.
In the last 3 weeks, there have been 5 elections in 5 states: Utah, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Colorado, Wyoming. We've won all 5. Over 1.3 million people voted in those 5 states. We won all 5. All of this noise and complaining and whining has come from the Trump campaign, because they don't like the fact that they've lost 5 elections in a row, that Republicans are uniting behind our campaign. So they're screaming on Drudge, and it's getting echoed, this notion of voterless election. It is nonsense. They are making it up. Over 1.3 million people voted. We won landslides in all 5. Now, there is a second component beyond the elections, which is the individual delegates are elected by the people. Donald Trump's campaign does not know how to organize on the grassroots. And so when the delegates are elected, conservative activists, real conservative activists show up and they elect delegates, and we are winning those elections over and over and over again. The Donald Trump campaign doesn't know what they're doing. They don't show up. In Colorado, the Donald Trump team was handing out flyers asking their supporters to vote for a slate of delegates. They included Cruz delegates on their slate. They just didn't even know how to type up a piece of paper without getting it wrong. In Washington State, when Washington State elected their delegates, 3 days before the election, the Donald Trump campaign, in a panic, realized Washington State was getting ready to elect their delegates. They sent out an emergency email to their Washington supporters, but they screwed up and sent it to their Washington, D.C. supporters instead of their Washington State supporters. I cannot help that the Donald Trump campaign does not seem capable of running a lemonade stand. Elections are won by voters and grassroots activists showing up and voting for the candidate they support. And we are winning election after election after election. And nobody, as I travel the country, nobody is asking me this other than the Trumpsters and people repeating it. What they're asking is, how do we beat Hillary and how do we bring back jobs? My focus is on jobs, freedom, and security, not this incessant whining from the other side. If you lose, don't cry about it. Go back and learn how to win an election. That's what this election is all about.
My question is rooted in this. As I've gone and I've been reading in every state, a lot of people are under the impression that after a state votes or caucuses, that the process is over. Most people, believe it or not, Senator, are not as deeply knowledgeable as you are about what happens with the delegates after. For example, this weekend, I think you could actually use the term, it was like a delegate bloodbath for Donald Trump, according to Politico. They use those words. And I'll quote Politico, quote, in Georgia, in Wyoming, in South Carolina, in Kansas, in Florida, Ted Cruz put on a clinic mobilizing his GOP activist base to capture at least 50 delegates on Saturday, while Trump came away with about a dozen in another bruising defeat that undermines his chances to become the Republican presidential nominee. Ted Cruz is now close within nearly 200 delegates of Donald Trump. So what I'm trying to ask and ascertain is, can you explain to people what exactly happens in these moments? It's a simple question. It's not a Trump question. It's a question about what's going to happen. You're arguing, Kasich is arguing that this is going to be settled at the convention, and I think people need to understand it because, most people don't.
The first point is that we are winning election after election after election in Utah, in North Dakota, in Wisconsin, in Colorado, and Wyoming. 1.3 million people, over 1.3 million people voted, and we won landslides in all five. And let's be clear, those are very different states. You compare Wyoming or North Dakota that are plain states and western states, you compare that to Wisconsin, which is an upper Midwest state, an industrial state. You compare that to Colorado, which is a blue to purple state, a libertarianish state. We're winning landslides everywhere. Now, the Trump campaign is in a panic. They don't know how to handle losing over and over again, so they're screaming every time the people vote against them. They scream the election's been stolen. No, when people vote against you, it means you've lost an election. Now, the second phase, which I just said a minute ago, is the actual delegates that go to Cleveland are elected by the people. And if you want to elect delegates, your supporters come and vote. Every other presidential candidate knows how to figure this out. And by the way, every presidential candidate has known how to figure this out in every prior cycle. The Donald Trump campaign doesn't know what they're doing. It's a Kim Kardashian reality show.
Right.
And so in Georgia, they elected their delegates, and conservative grassroots activists showed up, and the conservative grassroots are overwhelmingly with us, so they elected Cruz delegates. That's the democratic process when you win elections.
All right, here's a question.
People get elected.
What if the delegate selection doesn't represent the will of the people in that particular district or area?
Sean, that's why there's an election. And listen,
but if there's a conflict, that's why Senator, I don't know why you're mad. I'm asking, I'm just trying to understand it. I'm really having a hard time understanding why you're getting angry at this.
Sean, let me be clear. I'm not mad at all. The Trump campaign wants to distract from the real issues. I want to focus on the issues. And so when you ask only about the nonsense, how about we ask, you know what people ask me when I travel around? How do we bring jobs back? How do we turn our economy around? And
Senator,
one of the reasons why
I've asked you those questions 100 times. I've asked you those questions 100 times, more than anybody else.
Sean, today the people of New York are voting. They're making a decision. The polls are open till 9 p.m. One of the reasons Donald Trump refuses to debate me, hasn't debated in over a month, is because he doesn't have any concrete plans, any proposals, any policies to actually bring jobs back to America. He yells about it a lot, but he doesn't actually have a substantive agenda. The key to economic growth is small businesses. If you want to bring back economic growth, if you want to bring back jobs, if you want to raise wages, you get the burdens of Washington off of small businesses. My number one priority as president will be jobs and economic growth. If I'm elected president, we'll repeal every word of Obamacare. We'll pass a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. We'll rein in the regulators that are killing small businesses. We'll stop amnesty and end sanctuary cities, and that includes New York City that Bill de Blasio turned into a sanctuary city. We're going to stop Bill de Blasio's efforts to invite criminal illegal aliens to New York City. And the effect of all of those policies is going to result in millions and millions of new high-paying jobs coming back to America, coming back from China, back from Mexico, manufacturing jobs coming back to upstate New York, wages rising again for working men and women, young people coming out of school with jobs and opportunity. That's what the voters care about. That's what my focus is. I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't want to talk about the nonsense that he wants to distract us from.
I've never asked you.
Real solution.
I don't think most people, it's been a long time since we've had a contested convention. I don't think most people understand it. Senator, I've talked to you more about jobs and ISIS and immigration and probably anybody else that's interviewed you. And all I'm really trying to get to the bottom of is understanding. You have said to me that you think this is going to be a contested convention. There's article after article in state after state how you are pounding the ground and going back to states that have voted and are courting delegates that on a second ballot they will come over to the Cruz side, which, by the way, within the rules, you have the right to do. And all I really am trying to get you to do is explain what that process is to our audience so they understand it.
But look, Sean, it's not a question of within the rules or not. It's winning elections. These delegates are elected by the people, and when grassroots conservatives come out, we win. You know, the strength of our campaign is over 260,000 volunteers. The strength of our campaign is over 1.3 million contributions at tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org. That's the strength of the campaign. And every time there's an election that the conservative grassroots decide, we win. And that is the basic dynamic, and it's what I think will play out in Cleveland, that you cannot win the Republican nomination unless you can earn a majority of the delegates elected by the people. I do not believe Donald Trump will do that. In Cleveland, I believe we will. We're going to unify a majority of the delegates because a number of reasons. Number one, we want a strong, principled conservative with a real record. Number two, we want a presidential candidate with real policies and solutions, a positive, optimistic, conservative, forward-looking agenda to bring jobs back to America. But number three, we want to beat Hillary Clinton. And if Donald Trump is the nominee, Hillary wins by double digits. If I'm the nominee, we beat Hillary Clinton in the general election. And that's why we're winning election after election. It's why we're uniting Republicans.
One of the things that I know many of my audience are worried about is after this process, it seems to be getting and growing more contentious every day, is how the party is going to be united. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think you are absolutely right that it is critical to unite the party, not only to unite the Republican Party, but to unite America. And that is my number one focus right now is uniting the party and ultimately uniting the country. Of the 17 Republican candidates who started this campaign, 5 are now supporting our campaign. We've been endorsed by Rick Perry, by Lindsey Graham, by Jeb Bush, by Scott Walker, and Carly Fiorina. That is an incredible array. It is geographically diverse across the country. It is ideological diverse. It is the full array of the Republican Party that's coming together and unifying. And that's what we've got to do, is stand together. We've got to bring together not just Republicans, but independents, libertarians, Democrats. You know, every day at events, I have Democrats come up to me and say, I've been a Democrat my whole life. I'm voting for you. Yesterday in Baltimore, an African-American man said exactly that. I've been a Democrat. I've always been a Democrat. I changed my registration because I'm voting for you. Because people are fed up with the failures of the Obama-Clinton economy. They're fed up with young people not being able to find jobs, with wages stagnant. And they're also fed up with the federal government's assault on the Constitution and Bill of Rights. We need to defend our basic rights. And then when it comes to security, this administration has been the most anti-Israel administration in history. And President Obama and Hillary Clinton have been apologists for radical Islamic terrorists. We need a serious commander-in-chief who will stand up and defeat ISIS and stop Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. And I'll tell you, Sean, I am the only candidate in this field, Republican or Democrat, who has pledged to rip to shreds this Iranian nuclear deal on day one. Every other candidate, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, both say they will keep in place this Iranian nuclear deal. Now, Donald says he'll renegotiate, but renegotiating with the Ayatollah Khamenei, who chants death to America and death to Israel, I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu. A nuclear Iran is an existential threat to Israel and a profound threat to America. And as commander-in-chief, I will ensure that under no circumstances does Iran acquire nuclear weapons.
Senator Ted Cruz, we appreciate your time, as always. Thank you very much, and good luck in New York today. And I guess it's Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Delaware and Maryland next. We'll be following it closely. Thank you.
Wow, that's exactly right. Thank you, Sean. If you're in New York, the polls close at 9 p.m. Please come out and vote tonight. And anywhere in the country, if you want to join us, support us, come to tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org, sign up and volunteer, contribute. And the momentum is with us. We're going to win this. We're going to win the nomination. We're going to beat Hillary Clinton in the general. And we're going to turn this country around and bring jobs back to America.
I don't think we could suffer through another term of Obama, which Hillary represents. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, every day we hear horrible stories.